When my 3 children were young, we lived in Iowa. And one day we all went to see the animals in the Iowa City Park Zoo. Now this was a teeny tiny little zoo. They only had a lonesome buffalo, 2 deer, a mangy bear, a whole bunch of prairie dogs, and a family of coyotes. Now there was a mother coyote, a father coyote, and a teenager coyote who couldn't have been much more than 6 months old at the time. The coyotes lived in this little penned-in area, which really wasn't much bigger than a dog pen, but it had a little coyote house at the end that faced north. Now, when we got to the zoo, the mother and father coyote were sleeping or resting in that little bitty house, but the teenager coyote was walking around in the pen, casting a very suspicious eye on us, the Duncan family. We leaned over the fence and admired him. He seemed sort of shy and a little embarrassed to be the focus of so much attention. He wiggled his ears back and forth as though he were asking us questions, and then he would sneak little peeks at us and then pretend to stare off into the distance, sort of like a 3rd grader in the library. Barnaby, my older son, was about 11 at this time, and he was charmed by the coyote, and he began to talk to him. Barnaby said, We smiled. The coyote looked quickly at Barnaby, ducked his head, and moved his ears back and forth, as though he weren't sure that he'd heard that correctly. Barnaby repeated it. The teenager coyote looked at Barnaby again, ducked his head, waggled his ears once more, and raised his nose to the sky. He said, We were all delighted by this, and we laughed. And that made the coyote duck his tail between his legs and look ashamed. Barnaby answered immediately. He said, That little coyote almost smiled with delight. He tipped back his head and let loose. By this time, a crowd had gathered around that little pen, and everybody was listening to this conversation, and at the end of each sequence they laughed. But whenever they laughed, the coyote would duck his head and look ashamed, so everyone stopped laughing and stood there smiling, silently, holding their breaths as the conversation continued back and forth. Suddenly, from the little house, sharp barking. Sounded like 15 very angry coyotes. The little coyote crouched. He folded his ears back, ducked his head, and went slinking up to the door of the little house, looking back over his shoulder one time, as if he were saying, "Excuse me, but my mom's calling. I gotta go home." As soon as he entered the house, sounded as though he were taking a terrible beating. Suddenly he flew out the door and shot straight up to Barnaby, raised his head, and he howled. Barnaby got ready to answer, but it was too late. The coyote had already gone back into the house, and everything was silent. Barnaby tried a few more growls. and a few yowls to coax him out again. But the relationship was over. One of the other children at the fence looked at Barnaby and said, "Hey, what did you say to him?" Barnaby thought for a minute and then said, "Well, I really don't know, but we were communicating." Communicating. Now, how about that? I would be willing to bet that somewhere out there, among all those listeners, there is a coyote cousin. And maybe that coyote cousin and I could have a little coyote conversation. I'll tell you what. I'll start first, and then it'll be your turn. Here we go. Now you have a turn. Yes, I thought there was a coyote cousin out there. Now, let's try a little bit louder. Now it's your turn. I was right. There is a coyote cousin out there. Well, about 3 weeks later, my kids all said they wanted to go back to the Iowa City Zoo to see what the coyotes would be saying now. What would that little coyote be like this time? But when we got back to the zoo, the cage was empty, and the coyotes were gone.